This is the Chefs Without Restaurants podcast with your hosts, Chris Spear and Andrew Wilkinson. Each week, we'll be speaking with food entrepreneurs and people in the culinary industry. The following episode is one of our COVID Zoom sessions. If you're interested in learning more about our organization dedicated to helping people build and grow their food businesses, look us up on the web at chefswithoutrestaurants.com and .org, and on Facebook and Instagram at Chefs Without Restaurants. Now, enjoy the show. This is episode 37 of the Chefs Without Restaurants podcast. On this episode, we have Christian, the executive chef of Hootch and Banter restaurant in Frederick, Maryland. Christian is the first restaurant chef we've had on our show. Obviously, we talk a lot about the impact of COVID-19 on the restaurant industry. We also touch on kitchen culture, continuous learning, and culinary inspiration. Thanks to this week's sponsors, Tyler Wright, Danny Spletter, Ron Krieger, Cafe Bueno, Little Fig Bake Shop, Maryland Bakes, and the Savory Spoon Catering Company. If you want to support the show, our Venmo name is CHEFWORESTOS. If you enjoy the show, have ever received a job through one of our referrals, have been a guest, been given complimentary Chefs Without Restaurants swag, or simply want to help, it would be much appreciated. Feel free to let us know if you have any questions. Thanks so much, and have a great weekend. Welcome, everyone. This is the Chefs Without Restaurants podcast. This is Chris, and today I have Christian, the executive chef of Hootch and Banter restaurant in Frederick, Maryland. Morning, Christian.
What's going on, man? How are you?
Good. Great to have you on the show. You've been our number one requested guest to have.
I think that's hilarious, but yeah, I've been on for a while. I'm glad that we could work it out in these weird times.
Yeah. So why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got into cooking, and what you've been doing?
Well, I've been at Hootch for, I guess, almost 4 years now. I've been the executive chef there for be 3 in May. It's a weird anniversary since we're not working right now. But, I went to culinary school around here. I've been out for about 10 years. Worked my way up from restaurants in Frederick. I went to school in Columbia. I actually heard one of your other podcasts where I can't remember who it was, but he actually went to the same culinary school that I did. He did not have the same enthusiasm about culinary school as I do. He did not like it. Said it was a waste of money. But I went to Lincoln Tech in Columbia, and I don't know, man. I've just been slanging food ever since. I worked my way to this job. My original dream was actually to have a food truck. Several ideas for that. And somehow I ended up in fine dining, and I actually couldn't be happier. Of course, until the government shut us down.
Yeah, I had a dream of having a food truck too. It's so weird because in Frederick, we've only had them, 3 years now?
Yeah, so it hasn't been that long.
I moved here from, outside of Philadelphia where food trucks were like a normal thing. And I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to come to Frederick. This seems like such a cool place to have a food truck. And it's like, oh no, they're not legal. Like, what? It's 2007. They're not legal here. It was so weird to me.
Yeah, they were really behind the times on that. And honestly, all the breweries opening up and everything is really what I think kind of opened up the ability to have food trucks in Frederick.
Definitely. I mean, I don't think it's responsible to have people day drinking or whatever, drinking all the time and not have any food options.
Well, that's very true. Plus, I mean, it's just good business. You know what I mean? They're all over the country now. So did you have experience in fine dining? Did you work any really upscale places? So I pretty much, my first job in the kitchen, I was 17 years old and it was at a Waffle House. I was, cooking eggs from the 7 to 3 shift. And, I really fell in love with it then. But, I bounced around after high school. I did construction and I worked in a restaurant. I've worked front of house and back of house and all that stuff. And I found myself actually delivering textiles for like 5 years. For Cintas. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah.
And I was in a lot of kitchens and I just missed it. And I actually hurt myself and realized that I didn't really have a career path or a craft if I was going to be, driving a truck every day. You know what I mean? So I think I was like 26, 27. I enrolled in FCC's culinary program to try to get back into it. And I just didn't like the way that they ran it. I didn't like the teacher and all that. So then I got out and I went to Lincoln. Then I just popped myself into restaurants. I decided if I was going to do it, I was going to dive in head first and go in My family thought I was crazy. I was making $9 an hour all of a sudden, you know what I mean? Like making salads and garde-manger, and just kept moving up from there.
So you went to culinary school a lot later than most people. I mean, I think one of the things we hear is don't go to culinary school, but I think a lot of that comes from if you're 18 years old, you don't really know what you want to do for sure. Like maybe don't go, and also don't go to one of the big schools where you're going to pay $100,000 to $200,000. But it sounds like you had a better idea that you were looking to get into and stay in this industry.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and also there's also two schools of thought, whereas there are plenty of chefs that have just worked in restaurants since they were teenagers, and they're great chefs. You know what I mean? They learn from other people, and then they go and read. That's the biggest thing. You know what I mean? You still have to read every day. You still have to try to expand your craft. And there are some people that are just naturally talented like that. I think I learned just as much after culinary school in restaurants, working my way up on a line, than I did when I was in school. Like in school, you get a basis and a knowledge, but when you get into the restaurant, then you start getting your muscle memory down, and your touch and your feel and all your senses start to come into play. And you learn from watching other people that have done it for a long time.
Yeah, and with any industry, you get out what you put into it. You know, you had already said you got to read every day. I'm a firm believer in that, you know, whether you go to school or not, whether you're working at an amazing place or not, staying on top of learning and growing your craft, I think, is incredibly important. So you're the third chef at Hootch and Banter since they've opened.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's been an evolution of the cuisine there, or is it pretty much the same? Like, how have you seen the food change?
I think that all the chefs that have been there have been really good chefs. I think I was more ready for this particular area just because I've grown up in Frederick. I've been in Frederick since I was 15 years old. I know what people eat, you know. So, but there's definitely been an evolution. The guy before me, Rory, was absolutely incredible, man. He actually started a food truck, but he did a little bit more Southern cuisine. I think that mine's a little bit more American, a heavier accent on seafood. And, you know, we all try to source as local as possible and do those kinds of things. So I definitely, when I first took over, I had some ideas that I've been mulling around for a couple of years, but I did have to gain my confidence. It took me a good 6 to 8 months before I really felt like my food was like up there where it should be. You know what I mean? And then it's just the constant struggle of reading and pushing forward and listening to other people's ideas when you have other people around you that have good ideas and going from there, you know?
And Frederick's a place where I feel like you can't get too fancy. In my opinion, it's kind of like you have to have this highbrow, lowbrow kind of combo there.
Yep.
I mean, you obviously have a restaurant like Volt, but you know, I don't know how many people locally are the ones going there. I think it's bringing a lot of people from out of town. But if you want to be one of those kind of Frederick local everyday restaurants, you have to find that groove.
I think we're lucky, and I see it a lot of people coming in, is that people are just trying to get out of the city now and around DC, and they're coming to Frederick just because, you know, Frederick has a lot of attractions. They've done a lot of work around. So we're getting a lot of influx there. A lot of people tell us, you know, that we remind them of restaurants down there. I made a conscious decision, though, going back to what you said, to give a little bit larger portions. If you look at my portions, they're always a little bit larger. I take a hit by a couple % on food costs for that. But like you said, in my opinion, we're in Frederick, so I'm doing, you know, French techniques on American food. But I'm going to give you a little bit more on your plate because we're in Frederick, Maryland, and I think people, if they're paying $35 for an entree, they want to be full and have a little bit to take home too. You know what I mean?
Do you have any favorite menu items?
I feel like I can't even remember my menu items right now.
It's been so long.
It has. And you know what's so funny too is I was just getting ready to let's phasing winter stuff out and about to come into springtime. Like we got ramps right now and morels and all this peas, all these beautiful spring stuff that we're just totally missing out on. Like it drives me insane. I think spring is actually one of my favorite times of year for food.
I know. I said the only thing I don't miss is shelling a ton of fava beans. That job sucks.
Well, that's the beauty of getting to be an exec. You don't have to necessarily do the fava beans anymore. You get somebody else to do them for you. And peel asparagus. Those are two very tedious things to do.
I didn't even really write a spring menu. You know, for my business, I try to have like essentially 4 seasonal menus, and I could always pull from last year's. But I was looking at updating it, and once it looked like I wasn't even going to be working this spring, I'm like, I'm just going to jump right into summer menus. Like, start thinking about what's my summer menu look like, and not even waste any time on any new spring dishes.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's kind of where my focus has been over the last few days when I've been thinking about like say we can come back in May, even if we decide if we can only do takeout for a little while, you got to start looking at things that are going into summer. You know what I mean? That's exactly it. Because the springtime stuff it's such a short window. You know what I mean? That, it's about time to roll into the new stuff.
And it's also hard to even get product right now, even if you're at home. So there's not a lot of R&D. I'm looking at all these cookbooks and thinking, man, I want to make that. I want to make that. And then you have to kind of justify a trip to the grocery store. Like, okay,
exactly.
Well, is it worth going out to Wegmans or Common Market to get Morels or something like that to try this new dish?
Yeah. I don't even have that around me. I'm out here in Waynesboro, and there's a Walmart and a Martin's, but I mean, they just don't have much of a selection. I couldn't even find yeast until I think 2 days ago. I got my hands on some yeast. And so I'm going to start making some breads and stuff like that. But I couldn't even do that kind of stuff because I just couldn't even find it. It took me forever to find flour because Walmart here was just wiped out of like anything like that.
I only have it because a friend in town who's a chef brought me some yeast. She brought me some yeast and some flour. So I got about 20 pounds of flour actually. But my yeast is running low. So I might have to start making sourdough starter.
There you go. I've seen a lot of that. I've seen a lot of that is one nice thing during this whole, quarantine thing is you're seeing a lot of people go back to recipes that, their grandparents had for banana bread and stuff like that. And people are at home cooking for their families again, which is, it's nice to see. I'm guilty of, having my girls and going and getting fast food or something like that real quick to bring home. And lately during this, I've been cooking for them, just about every night. So.
Yeah, I see it more as enjoyment again. When I was working, not that it wasn't enjoyable, but, when you have a day off, it's kind of like, I don't necessarily want to be cooking at home. Like I've been cooking all
100%.
week. Like last night I made some Filipino chicken adobo. It's like, yeah, I got nothing else to do. I might as well make this and grab a beer and stand out. And I did it all on the grill last night. And that was fun. And tonight I'm ready to cook dinner again. So kind of having fun with it as long as I have the ingredients for it.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping to see Andrew on here. I was going to make some pizza dough later. I'm going to make some pizza for my kids tonight, I think.
Trying to get Andrew back on the show. He and our schedules have been running kind of opposites. So,
well, he's still running, so.
He's still running. And I actually am going to have him as a guest on the show because we were talking the other day. I went out to the truck. His business has changed significantly. And he's made some changes that I think are going to continue even when this is over. I think this pushed a lot of people to examine their business models and what was working and what wasn't. And I think some good things came out of this for him business-wise, like how he was operating. So we talked about getting him on the show to kind of talk about this. Everyone's had to kind of pivot a little bit, especially if they were going to stay open and really evaluate how they were running their business.
Yeah, I mean, like, pizza, that's a good one. You know what I mean? A lot of those things. And food trucks right now, they were getting the disadvantage for the longest time. And now, they're killing it. They're the ones keeping people fed right now. If you look at the restaurants, they've all kind of slowly dropped off. I think Lazy Fish is still open. And Tsunami just opened up, which is incredible that they were able to just open up in the middle of all this.
I know. I went and got Lazy Fish takeout the other night, and Pong was in there, and I asked him how it was going, and he said he had done like 230 bowls of ramen the day before or something, which is amazing for a takeout.
I mean, people were waiting for that place. I've been waiting for that place to open. It's almost worth me driving into town just to get some.
Yeah, talk about a tough hand dealt there, having just gotten approved to open your restaurant, and you can't even open it the way that you want to. You got to start doing the takeout thing, though, because now you're paying rent on this restaurant in downtown Market.
Well, exactly, yeah. And that, I'm sure that's not cheap. That's where viniculture used to be. But I mean, yeah, good for them. Like I said before when we were talking earlier, I don't know when they're going to be able to let us sit down in restaurants again, and when they do, how many people are we going to be? We have a tiny building. You've seen the restaurant, you know what I mean? How many people are we going to be able to sit there? So that we might have to remodel what we're doing, which would be unfortunate. We'd have a whole separate kitchen upstairs that essentially wouldn't be used. You know what I mean? So it's scary, but.
Are you guys staying in contact, talking about plans?
Yeah, we are. And our last plan was actually before, I guess Hogan had announced that schools were going to be closed until April 30th. And I think he's extended it since then. But he had originally said April 30th. So we had talked about that being a time where we were going to look at reopening. So at this point, we just have to figure out, are we going to decide to end up reopening for takeout until they let us see people in the restaurant, or how do we want to ride this out? You know what I mean? That's all you can do.
Yeah. I mean, there's only so much of your menu you can modify to takeout. I mean, some restaurants are set up better for it. You obviously have delicious, amazing food, but I think a lot of your food, the plating is important, the way it looks.
It is.
And throwing it in a to-go container doesn't make sense.
The cocktails that Jeff does, like all those things, like it's an experience, you know what I mean? So, but we could throw our sandwich menu on there, essentially like our lunch menu on there, and go with that and do all those things. And then, it would help, it's revenue. But it's not the same as what we were doing. So that's more of a question, is how do we get back to where we were, or do we as an industry even get back there anytime soon? Like,
yeah. I don't know. It's something I think about all the time. Like, I have no idea what my business is going to look like when this is over. Are people, my whole thing has been stay home. It's super convenient to stay home and eat dinner there. Let me come to you. And I'm sure people are going to be like, nah, man, I've been in my house for 2 months. I don't want to stay home and eat. Like, am I going to be out of business because everyone's going to want to go out, So yeah, I'm really thinking about like what the marketing looks like for a chef who does a in-home experience.
Yeah, I do. I've heard a lot of naysayers saying that they think that we aren't going to be the same, and not us in particular, but just the industry isn't going to be the same. And I think that it may not be the same. The new normal may be a new normal, but I don't think it's going to stay that way. I think that we will end up back to where we were, because people enjoy going to restaurants, people enjoy going to bars, people enjoy going out and being social. We just have to make sure we figure this thing out and be able to get back there. And it might take some time, but I think that eventually we'll get back there. But there are going to be a lot of people that fall to the wayside. And we have to make sure that we make a plan so that we don't,
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm not a germaphobe at all. And something I've done a number of times is I'll go to a restaurant and sit by myself at the bar. And I've literally shared food with strangers, sitting next to me. You're like, someone will say, oh, would you like to try this? I'm like, sure. And I'd grab a fork and eat off of some stranger's plate. And now you won't even shake hands with people
People may never shake hands again, which is crazy.
So weird. So I think the days of sharing food with people I don't know are over.
I guess perhaps. I cannot see a scenario where you're in a kitchen developing food and you have all your cooks around you and you don't share a plate. You know what I mean? I guess those people, but I don't see a situation where people aren't doing that. That's part of the communal bond of cooking and creating,
Oh yeah, pre-meal. Like, I miss pre-meals every night where you put up plates and just throw them down, and like the wait staff are just in there fighting over every forkful of food.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought about that. That's probably going to look a little different as well. Do you have a favorite place that you're going to right now that does takeout? Is there anywhere you're going to, or do you not have as many places up where you are?
Yeah, out here by me, man, it's rural Pennsylvania. So it's, it's pizza and sub shops essentially, like all over the place. So there's a pizza place behind me that it's called Brothers Pizza, and they make great wings. So I get wings from there. I'm guilty of that probably at least twice a week at this point. But when this all went down, I stocked up twice. I stocked up my freezer, and I've gone to the store a couple times to get whatever produce I can find. For the most part, I've just been cooking for my kids at home, so it means a lot of mac and cheese. But I've been cooking at home for the most part. I'm not as familiar with the restaurants around here. If I were in downtown Frederick, I would have been ordering from everybody all the time. I've gotten even fatter than I've gotten now.
Yeah, it's a little hike for you, I guess.
Yeah, I'm trying to do my part too. Stay home. Like I said, I've gone to the store a few times. I've had to experience bootlegging for the first time in my life, where I have to go into Maryland to buy booze because there's no liquor sales out here in PA since the 16th. So
what? There's no liquor sales at all?
So they're like the South, where all of the liquor stores are state run. And so on the 16th or the 17th, I can't remember. I think it was the 17th because it was St. Patty's Day. But they actually, since they're state run, they shut down all of their liquor stores. So you can go to like a gas station and you get like a 6-pack of beer or, some wine, but it's crappy gas station wine. But you can't go get whiskey anywhere or anything like that. So
at least they changed it and you could buy a 6-pack. Like, I used to live in Pennsylvania it's been like 12 years. And back
Yeah,
then,
you'd have
all
to
you
go
could
to
buy
a
was a
bar.
case. That was crazy stuff. I'm like, I just want a single or a 6-pack. I'm like, no, you got to buy a case. I'm like, I don't want a case.
I don't want a 30-pack of Bush. Like,
I like variety. I don't ever want a case of anything. Even if I'm having a party, I'm doing mixes. Wow, I forgot about that. And I think the interesting thing is going to be the whole cocktails to go. Like they've kind of opened this thing up. Are you going to be able to go back to that? Because right now restaurants are just, it's like the Wild West. They're making cocktails, putting them in quart containers, delivering them to your house. Like,
I think
how do you stop
awesome.
that going forward,
Well, that's very true. I mean, I guess, I don't know, didn't he have to lift the governor lifted some kind of, I don't know how he did that. He had to pass something special, I believe, for them to be able to do that. So I guess he could just rescind that once things go back to normal. I'm not sure. But then people are going to be used to it. I mean, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think you guys should just open up and have Jeff making cocktails. You don't even need to have food. Just have Jeff go in and start making quarts of cocktails.
You have to serve some kind of food in order to do that. Actually, I guess maybe 10th Ward is probably doing it, so maybe you don't have to serve food.
Yeah, I guess that also comes down to what kind of establishment you are, because you all have different regulations, restaurants versus bars and tasting rooms.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, we have to be serving food technically in order to be open at the bar for the most part. But we generally, that's why we shut our bar down usually when the kitchen shuts down on the weekend at 10 o'clock, and the bar is usually shut down by 11:30. Our upstairs might be open later because that's more of a late night crowd, but and our kitchen stays open a little bit later there too.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, what else do you want to talk to? Anything you want to get off your chest, talk about in the food world? Anything our listeners should know about you or the restaurant?
I think that you should check out Hootch and Banter on Instagram. And as soon as we open, even if it's just for takeout, I think you guys come and support us, help us stay open,
I'm hoping to have some good old parties when this thing gets back to normal, for sure.
Well, for sure. I can't wait to do another wine dinner, to be honest with you.
Oh, the wine dinners. I haven't been out to one, but the food always looks great. I think they're probably always on nights I'm working or something.
Yeah, we do them on Wednesday nights, except for the last one we did on New Year's, just because it was New Year's. But they're fun, man. They're a lot of fun because you get to think outside of the box and do stuff that you normally wouldn't do. You know what I mean? And you've got a group of people that are coming just to try whatever you want to. They trust you. You know what I mean? So they trust your coursing and your creating and all that. So you get to just really play, and it's they're a lot of fun.
On those nights, do you have any other menu, or is it just the wine dinner menu?
Yeah. So since we have the upstairs open, what we do is we sell the wine dinner out at 36 seats, and we do family style. So we'll set up 2 tables of 18 people, and then I'll pretty much prep everything I need to downstairs or whatever, and I'll just fire it all in our upstairs kitchen. And I'll take 2 guys with me. And so then downstairs, my Sue will run the show downstairs, and we just run a regular menu, regular dinner service.
That sounds awesome. You guys have won so many awards for, Best of Frederick, for everything, it seems like. There's been a couple of years you guys have pretty much swept all the categories, it seems.
Yeah, we've been in there and it's been nice, but what's funny is I always tease Jeff because they love Jeff so much more. He always wins actually first place and best cocktail and stuff like that. And the food sometimes, it's a double-edged sword. Like when I first took over, I was lucky that I had Jeff making the cocktail so that people would come in and eat my food. You know what I mean? But now we're on the same level, but they definitely, Frederick loves Jeff's cocktails. They like my food a little bit less.
They do, but it's so great because I'm not from here, and I moved here in 2007, and I was into cocktails, and there was no places to get cocktails.
Oh, dude, watching him is incredible. Like we call him a bar chef, man, because you watch him make the drinks, everything. It's a muscle memory, the thought that he puts into them, all the layering of the flavors. But then when you watch him make them too, it's like watching an amazing line cook who's just fluidly moving around his line. You know what I mean? Like he's definitely. He's the best. He's the best I've worked with. He's incredible. Well,
I feel honored that he made a cocktail of mine and put it on your menu there, and I even had my name on it. In fact, I think the first time I actually met you was the day I was sitting there trying the cocktail that he had made for me.
Yeah, that is. I remember that actually.
But that was a really cool experience, to enter the Frederick Best Cocktail competition and have Jeff make the drinks and to say, in his opinion, that it was the best cocktail was quite awesome.
No, that is cool. And Jeff is amazing, man. He actually he lives down the street from me. We both live out here in Waynesboro, but we've been socially distancing. So
you guys got that commuter route going.
Yeah, I mean, my 15-year-old daughter goes to high school out here, which is the main reason that I moved out here. It makes things a lot easier when I'm off, but it definitely is a terrible ride home at midnight when you've been to work for 14 hours, you know?
Mm-hmm. So do you miss the 14-hour days?
I actually do now. The first week or so, man, my body felt better. You know what I mean? Like, legs felt good, like, felt young again. But I mean, now, yeah, like, because I mean, I sit here and look at the same four walls all day long. You know what I mean? Like, the silver lining has been great because I've spent a lot more time with my kids that I would normally not get because I've worked so much. You know what I mean? So there's been a lot of one-on-one time with them. So that's the silver lining. But other than that, yeah, it drives me crazy being here all the time. There's a reason that I chose a job and love a job that I work 12 to 16 hours a day. You know what I mean?
I wonder how many of us are going to have trouble getting back into that grueling physical
Yeah.
schedule. You know, like taking a couple
That
months
first dub
off.
is gonna suck. Yep.
You're gonna lose something. You're gonna need some spring training for sure before you go back.
For sure. Some stretching.
Well, I'm gonna jump into the speed round on the fly here and ask you some somewhat rapid fire questions. We always say 1 or 2 word answers, although some of these can go long, and I'm not feeling like we're pressed for time and have to bang through these. So, what are some of your favorite culinary resources? You know, where would you recommend people if they're looking to get into cooking? Websites, cookbooks, anything of that nature?
Oh man. I mean, 2 cookbooks that I take with me in every kitchen that I go into are LaRousse, Gastronomique, and Escaffier's original. But I mean, for the most part, honestly, I think Instagram's a good tool. I think Google's a good tool. YouTube can be a good tool at times. It all depends on what you're trying to do, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? But it's
Mm-hmm.
all about reading. And it's the one beautiful thing is you can pick up a book. You know what I mean? I've got several cookbooks, some that I haven't even opened because I'll just go to Goodwill sometimes and just buy books out of the cooking section. You know what I mean? Or the book section. So you can open up a book and start reading, and you'll have an idea spark there. Or if you have an idea in your mind and you just go to Google, and then you just end up reading and reading and reading and reading and reading, and you know what I mean. Those are the best things. So
Yeah, last week I made a kimchi focaccia, and it started because
I saw that.
a chef had posted on Instagram a photo of a kimchi bread that he made.
I think that
And
we followed that same guy because I saw that and then I saw yours and I was like, did I see Chris's or did I see two people do that?
it's Brad at Ellie in DC. He's one of my favorite
Yeah.
chefs, and it's one of my favorite restaurants. But I had never heard of that. So then I had asked him a question about it, and then I went right to Google and I Googled kimchi bread to see if there was any recipe anywhere, and like nobody had done it from what I had seen. But I did find a recipe for kimchi focaccia. So like to your point, I saw something on Instagram, and then I Googled that thing on the internet, and
Yeah.
then kind of looked at a recipe there, and then just did my own hybrid. So I was like, okay, that's how they did it. And then I took what I liked, but I brought a lot of my own flair to it, changed the technique a little bit. But I
Yep,
just kind of,
exactly.
the one thing kind of sparked the beginning. And then I just wanted to read a little deeper to kind of figure out how I would do it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what the beauty of it is. And that's what the beauty of cooking is, man. We're all taking, it's like writing a song, man. There's the same chords and the same progressions. You just got to find a way to make those yours. You know what I mean? So we're all taking pieces out of the same song.
Yeah, it's interesting though, when you have something unique, if you do your version, it seems like a ripoff, but nobody cares about the old stuff. So like if I'm making a kimchi focaccia, it's easy to say like, oh, well, that chef inspired that or that chef did that. But if I made chicken parm, no one would care. You know,
Yeah.
I've always kind of wondered like, what is the time frame where something is like okay to rip off or be inspired by
Yeah.
without people
Statute of
throwing
limitation.
shade? Yeah,
For
you know,
sure.
like
For sure.
if I made a really interesting lasagna tomorrow, nobody's going to care because lasagna has been a thing for thousands of years. But,
Yeah.
you know, if you're inspired by one of the signature dishes from a restaurant, people kind of give you grief for it. It's just cooking.
It is, man. It's just cooking, just heat.
Do you have any favorite chefs, either well known or locally or both?
So, I mean, locally, man, like Jeff Beard at Wine Kitchen is phenomenal. I worked with him closely a long time ago, and he's just, you know, he's an incredible chef. Chefs that, you know, I follow maybe more famously, I guess, Chuck Hughes, because he's from Montreal. He's definitely one of my favorites. Rick Bayless and Roy Choi are two of my other favorites as well. So, I mean, I just follow a lot. That's one beautiful thing about Instagram and Twitter is you can just go and just keep following people. You know what I mean? Just all day long, and you learn about new people and new foods and things like that. You know?
Yeah, Rick Bayless was one of those guys that I really found early on in my career, and I developed a love for Mexican cooking and just looking at the depths that he went to. He closes his restaurant and takes his whole staff down to Mexico to learn
Mm.
about a new region. I really loved reading through those books. And before cookbooks were coffee table books, like I don't think there's really any photos in his books. If you look at his books, they're like
Yeah,
350-page books with
it's
like
all
5
information and
photos.
recipes and things like that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So one of the questions I've been asking recently is, knowing that you were going to be quarantined for a couple of weeks, what are some items that you stocked up on or wished that you stocked up on? Like, to
I
you, what
wish
does a well-stocked pantry look like?
I wish that I would have gotten more red meat. I also went because of my hours. Before this was going on, I went one night after I got off work to Walmart, and they were wiped out in the protein section. And so was the next time that I went as well, and that was in the afternoon, and that was the Martins. So I've probably got 4 or 5 whole chickens, and I broke them down and put them in bags and put them in my freezer. I was able to get some ground turkey, some ground beef. I got a chuck roast, but that was the only red meat that I could find. I really wish that I would have been able to find like some good ribeyes or something like that. I haven't been able to find any of that. I made sure that I had lots of pasta and rice, and I tried for flour and yeast. It took me for a while. I finally got that. But those are, you need essential things. You just need to make sure that you have a starch, a protein, and as long as you've got, I've got chicken stock always in my freezer. So, as long as you've got some chicken stock too, you can make a simple sauce, and then you can make yourself something as long as you have those things,
Yeah, I don't usually shop at Giant, but my mother-in-law does. So we went shopping yesterday because we hadn't been in like 2 weeks. And I was shocked. They had whole beef tenderloin there, and it was on sale for $8.99 a pound.
Oh, wow. That's cheaper than I get it at the restaurant.
Right? And then they had ribeyes, like ribeye roasts. And I think that was maybe like $9.99 a pound. So, you can get like 5 good steaks out of them is the size they had them cut into. I was like, wow, I've never even seen that. I don't know if that's something special that they're doing at Giant right now, but I might have to start buying tenderloin there.
Yeah, for real. That's cheap. I'd buy them there instead of from where I normally
I think it was $11.99 a pound regular and $8.99 with the card. But I was like, well,
yeah, $11.99 sounds pretty close to what we pay.
But that's cheap. That's still cheap. I mean, it's $13.99 a pound, I think, at Costco, because that's usually where I pick mine up. And, they have a really higher grade choice at Costco. I've read a lot about their
I've used theirs before in a pinch when we've run out or we've sold more steaks than we expect or whatever. We utilize Costco a lot. And I've used their ribeye and New York strip before in a pinch as well.
I just hate going there right now because you're waiting in line for like an hour outside.
I was going to say, they only let a certain amount of people in the building at a time now, don't they?
Yeah. That was the thing about Giant. There was no one in the parking lot. We got in, there was maybe 15 people in the whole grocery store. So I felt like very low potential contact there and easy in, easy out. As much as I love places like Costco and Wegmans, like I don't want to go near either one of those right now.
Yeah, I haven't been in at least a month anywhere except for the Martins here.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Got to get back to normal life sometime soon.
Yeah, the new normal, right?
The new normal. So this is not a quick question, but we always ask our guests, what do you want to be remembered for?
Oh, man. That is a tough question.
I know. And that could be personally or professionally or both.
Honestly, I would just want to be remembered for being a good guy. You know what I mean? Like, food aside, everything aside, just being a fair guy. You know what I mean? Like, fair guy and a good dad.
So does that translate to how you run your kitchen too?
Yeah, for sure. Like I definitely try to, we all have our moments, especially in high stress situations like we get into, or something gets ruined that you've worked really hard on, you know what I mean? Or something like that. We always have those moments, but I try to use them as teaching moments. I always try to be fair, and I always apologize if I feel like I stepped out of line, which is what, chefs that I worked for in the past, not like that at all. You know what I mean? But I feel like in today's day and age, you need to be more fair with people. So they'll, basically you get a better crew that trusts you more if you're willing to be open and honest with them, including your mistakes. So.
Yeah, I think for the better, we're seeing quite a shift in kitchen culture, and we talk a lot about that on the show with people. And, what we need to do to get it where it should be.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually, honestly, I mean, I'm 38, but I think that the younger generation of cooks coming up are actually helping to fuel that because, they're not really used to the way that, like, say, you and I may have been treated or raised. You know what I mean? So, and because, it's not okay. Some people think it's making the next generation soft, but I disagree. I think it's making them more open and willing to more cerebral. They think about things and feelings, and that's important in today's world.
Well, I equate it to parenting. I mean, you have kids. It's like our parents used to spank us. Some parents used to hit their kids like pretty hard or use belts and stuff. Dads didn't hug their kids or say, I love you. Like, I think we've looked at all that and said, that probably isn't the way to raise a kid.
Yeah,
and we've
totally.
changed.
That's exactly it.
Similarly, this whole notion of like, well, I had chefs swear at me and throw pots and stuff at me, so I'm going to continue to do that. Like, no, at some point we need to break that cycle.
That's exactly it. Break the cycle.
And I don't think it's hurting the restaurant industry at all.
No, I wouldn't think so at all. It's it's making it stronger.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I'll send everyone your way. We do a lot of show notes, so I'll put links to the restaurant, your Instagram, and everything on there, and people will know where to find you. And then, I'm telling people I'd love to touch base, sometime in the next year once we get back to normal and kind of talk to you about how things have changed. I want to do follow-up shows with everyone and see.
For sure. I think that's an awesome idea.
See how things worked out. So thank you to our listeners. As always, you can find us at chefswithoutrestaurants.com and .org and on Facebook and Instagram at Chefs Without Restaurants. Thanks so much and have a great week. Thanks for listening to the Chefs Without Restaurants podcast. And if you're interested in being a guest on the show or sponsoring a show, please let us know. We can be reached at chefswithoutrestaurants@gmail.com. Thanks so much.